Hey, what's happening, everybody? Chandler Bolt here, and we are super excited to have you on today's webinar. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. If you will first let me know, A, that you can hear me, and B, that you can see me. If you'll just comment in the chat, let me know that you can hear me, that you can see me, and then also let me know where you're tuning in from. We're going to get this thing kicked off in just a couple minutes here. You should see me waving my hands right here, and we're going to get going in just a second. So if you're just now joining us, comment in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from and that you can hear me and that you can see me. This is going to be a lot of fun. We got over 2,000 people registered for this thing, and so it's going to be amazing. So Theresa, Isabel, Heather from Florida, Anna Rose from Chicago, Terry, Michigan, Carol, Florida, Jennifer, Michigan. We got Stacy from France, Shirley from Belize, Tamara from Baton Rouge, Lori from Atlanta, awesome Corpus Christi, Texas, Ray from South Carolina. That's where I'm from. We got North Carolina, Texas, Perth, Australia, Sweden. Magnus, how's it going? Joshua Kelly, what's happening, brother? Victor Kizzy. We got Hans from Germany. That's awesome. We got Christopher. Victor from Thailand.
Nice.
Love it.
No one from Edinburgh, Scotland?
That's for
London, UK. There we go, Carol.
Adrian from Venezuela. Kingsley from Ghana. Carol, yeah, that's what you just said, London, UK. We got Marie from Paris. Wow, so all over the place. I won't bore you by continuing to read these off, but that's pretty cool. So, hey, welcome. Derek from Alberta, Canada. I don't think we had the Canadian contingency represented yet, so I'll
My wife's from Alberta.
No way. Awesome. So let's do this. Hey, we're super excited to have you here. I don't know if you've ever been on one of these trainings before with me, but this is going to be action-packed. You are going to learn a ton. So if you haven't already, go ahead and take out some notes, take out a pen and paper, close the door to your office or wherever you're watching this, turn off your phone, put your phone in Do Not Disturb, close out Facebook. Be prepared because you're going to learn a lot over the next 60 to 90 minutes. So we're going to go for about an hour, and then we're going to have a 30-minute Q&A. Now, Rami is about to take the wheel. If you haven't heard of Rami, or also known as R.E. Vance, he's one of our best coaches here at Self-Publishing School. He's one of our fiction coaches. He's coached hundreds and hundreds of people through the process of writing fiction books. He's a USA Today bestselling author. He's also written, I don't even know how many books at this point, a ton of them. He'll tell you about that in a second. But really, he's the master when it comes to teaching fiction and teaching storytelling. Now, that's what we're going to be breaking down. He'll tell you all about this in just one second. But my favorite lesson, and I'm going to be here hanging out as well, but my favorite lesson is the second lesson, which is the 5 fundamentals of stories. And so he's going to be diving in. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Rami, if you want to say hey, and then we can share your screen, and then we'll kick things off.
All right. Well, hello, everybody from Edinburgh, Scotland. It's amazing to have you guys from all over the world. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. It's going to blip out for about a second. It'll come right back on. And
there we go.
All right.
If you guys can also let us know in the chat box that you can now see and hear the screen. We got a bunch more people kind of filing in here, and a bunch more people registering. 2014 people.
Nice.
So that's awesome.
Also a good year.
Yes. All right. Everybody can see it. Let's do it, Rami.
All right, rock and roll. So this webinar is titled How to Fearlessly Write an Amazing Novel in 90 Days and Live Full-Time Off of Your Fiction Without Compromising on Quality. I'm super excited to be presenting this to you today. Basically, this webinar came from Chandler and I discussing the possibilities one has as a fiction writer and realizing that in many ways there are far more opportunities as a fiction author than as a nonfiction one. But at the same time, there's so many people who try to write fiction and they just fail. So why? Well, we've tested, we've researched, we've studied, and we've surveyed, and here's what we've come up with. But before we begin, a couple points. Actually, Chandler kind of mentioned this already. This is going to last for about an hour, and then we're going to open up for questions. So please, please, please write it down. All right. So a wee bit about me. This is me. I'm just kidding. This is actually me. I'm a hybrid from Cairo, Egypt, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm an award-winning author of 11 best-selling books. I have over 13 years experience in traditional and self-publishing. In fact, my first foray in the publishing world was opening up my own publishing house that is still running today. I have coached hundreds of students to write and publish their first book. I'm a trained lecturer, speech and writing coach. And as Chandler mentioned, one of my books made it to the USA Today best list. All right, so who is this webinar for? Anyone who wants a quick fix overnight success formula. And if you believe that, I am also selling this. Look, the truth is there is no overnight success formula that will unlock your writing and finally earn you that money so that you can buy that island. But there are proven actionable steps that can help you get there. They are the first steps that you can take. So who is this webinar really for? Well, let's see if this resonates with you guys. It's for people who write or really want to write fiction. People who have a half a dozen incomplete novels sitting in a desk somewhere. People who have amazing stories in their head, but they just can't get it to work. Every time you sit down to write, it just doesn't pop. And people who want to be amazing storytellers, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, but aren't sure exactly how to do it. People who've read that book and went, you know what, I can write better than this guy. And people who want to write fiction, but don't believe that they can make money off of it. After all, you've got mouths to feed, we have responsibilities and we can't spend our time doing the fun thing that doesn't really kind of provide for our families and ourselves. So this webinar is for people who believe that they have what it takes to write a kick-ass story and make money in fiction, but just aren't sure how to get there. So remember that bio I showed you? Well, 3 years ago, it could have read like this. I was the guy with a half a dozen unfinished novels. And when I did sit down to write, it just never popped. I was too focused on being a publisher rather than a writer, and I never had time to do it. I was an entrepreneur. And I kept, watching the time go by and saying the time's not right. I think I actually believed that I needed to earn, my first $1 million and then start writing rather than the reverse. But the truth is, it all boiled down to this. I wasn't good enough. You see, the trouble is I've wanted to be a writer ever since I wrote that first 2,000-word short story as an 8-year-old, that mashup of Superman and Robotech, but I never did anything about it. And every time I tried, I was being chased by these two guys. So you remember that Minotaur I showed you earlier? It was a joke, but not really, because every time I would sit down and write, I kind of visualized myself running through a maze, being chased by these guys, and I just could never kind of escape them. So what changed? This. My wife told me she was pregnant, and I had one of those dizzying moments of, oh my God, I'm about to be a dad. Followed by a holy guacamole, I'm about to be a dad. And after the initial shock and joy subsided, I'm not proud of the next thing that ran through my mind. Because the next question was, what about my writing? I mean, I hadn't written that book yet. I hadn't written anything really. And now I was about to become a dad. So how could I justify writing? Kids are expensive. And suddenly I became very afraid that my dreams were going to be killed by the greatest serial killer of all. So I did what any responsible person would do. I handed over my share of the publishing house that I had started 10 years earlier to my business partners. In other words, I quit my full-time paying job and I gave myself 9 months to write and publish my first novel. So forgive the pun. And I'd like to tell you that, once I decided to do it and, seeing that pea stick of doom finally got my butt in the chair and I wrote that novel and I was an overnight success and things have never been better. But the truth is the only part of that statement that's actually true is that things have never been better. The rest I bled for. So what I'd like to call next, those first initial weeks of, trying to sit down and get that novel to work, was my investigation phase. I studied, I wrote, I invested in myself, tools, courses, books, and the first thing I uncovered was why authors fail. So I like to call this the 5 peaks of author failure, and let's see if any of this resonates with you. No confidence. Every time I sat down to write, I just didn't feel that this was going anywhere. No time. I was an entrepreneur. I had, a family. I had all this stuff. I couldn't get it done. No discipline. You sit down to write, and then the next thing you know, you're watching cat videos on YouTube. No support, because let's be honest, you tell your friends that you want to be a writer, that you're working on a novel, and they all kind of give you that high five, but behind their eyes, you can see, oh, what a cute little hobby Jack's into. We know that that's not really going to go anywhere. And then finally, I didn't understand the story fundamentals. So before I go on, I'd just love to know, do any of these 5 peaks resonate with you guys?
Yeah, and I'd love for folks to kind of just comment in the chat box. If so, which one of these do you resonate with the most? Because we're going to kind of knock these down and in the lessons that Rami's coming up with. So is it no confidence, no time, no support, no discipline to write, or don't understand the story fundamentals? So Mark says all 5. Sherman, all of them. Victor says that's me. Andre, yes. Teresa, yes. Lori,
Jennifer,
lack of confidence and
discipline.
Yep. 3 out of 5. Werner.
Awesome.
Struggle with all, but mainly no support. The story fundamentals. Oh, awesome. You guys are going to love lesson number 2. Cool. Let's keep moving.
Right. Let's keep moving. All right. Rock and roll. So here's my promise to you guys. If you stick to the end of the webinar, you'll learn how to write an incredible selling story that will be your first major step towards being a full-time author without compromising on quality or selling your soul or that crushing self-doubt or taking years to get it done. Sound good? All right, rock and roll. Okay, so here are the 3 secrets that literally got me from nothing to 11 books. And spoiler alert, you don't have to get pregnant. Getting pregnant isn't one of them. So, and then lastly, I'm going to talk about an opportunity at the end, but more on that later. So secret number 1, all the money is in fiction and why that matters. Number 2, the 5-step writing formula that anyone can follow to write a great story. Number 3, the 1% changes that gave me an extra 13 hours a week to actually get it done. And then finally, we'll talk about that special opportunity, but more on that later. So lesson 1, all the money is in fiction, and why does that matter? All right, let's be honest. There's this myth that you can't make money writing fiction. And the key difference between a hobby and a profession is getting paid. And so if you honestly believe that you're never going to make money off of your work, you're never going to treat it seriously enough to make it. And that's exactly what I did. Well, sort of. See, what I actually did was I started my publishing house. It was the stupidest thing I ever did, in my quest to be a writer, because I didn't want to be a publisher. I wanted to be a writer. But I was 27 and I didn't know better. And I thought that getting into publishing would give me all the knowledge I needed to know to succeed. And so I did what any good publisher would do. I went to the book fairs. Frankfurt Book Fair, London Book Fair, Book Expo America, the Bologna Children's Book Fair, TOC, and dozens more. And I talked to publishers and I talked to other writers. And what did I learn? Well, nothing about writing. And what's more, I had never been more discouraged in my journey to be a fiction author than at that moment, because all I heard over and over and over again was there was no money in fiction. But it kind of doesn't make sense. I mean, let's just go back for a minute. Let's take a look at these fairs. All these fairs are dedicated to selling books, and there's no money in fiction? There's something wrong about this, so let's investigate. So about 2 weeks ago, I took a screenshot of Amazon here, the top 28 books on Amazon about 10 days ago or so. Actually, what I did was I took a look at the top 50 books, and here's what I found. 4 of them were nonfiction, and 46 of them were fiction. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. The top 50 books on Amazon must all be traditionally published authors and not peeps who are doing it on their own. In other words, not indie authors. That's not true, because out of the 46 fiction authors, at least 14 of them are indie authors. And I suspect actually that number is a wee bit higher, but a lot of indie authors will actually kind of put a publishing house in Amazon. Like you can actually say publishing house. So for example, I'm an indie author, but all my books are published under the label Keep Evolving Studios. So it's a little bit difficult to verify that exactly. But the 14 I can absolutely verify. So 14 out of 50 are indie authors. And let's take a look at some of the authors, like the indie authors who aren't in the top 50. Bella Forrest. Bella Forrest is one of the superheroes of the indie world, and she makes close to $500,000 a month. Now, how do we calculate this number? We take her books rankings, and we can estimate how many sales the book rankings are based on her book rankings, and we times it by her book price. And when you take those two numbers together, you get close to just over $500,000 a month. She's not the only one. Ruby Dixon, who writes paranormal romances, gets close to $100,000 a month. But let's be honest, you don't need to be earning six figures to have a full-time income off of writing. So let's take a look at one of Self-Publishing School's very own graduates, Emma Ashley, who earns over $3,000 a month in passive income on her book sales. And she's not the only one. Another graduate from Self-Publishing School is Kathy Pieper, who had the most successful launch in Self-Publishing School history. She had a $10,000 plus launch. She absolutely killed it. And what about me? Well, remember that expensive baby I told you about? Well, he's free. That means diapers, food, daycare, babysitters, hospital visits, everything. So much for having an expensive child. And what's more, he's so free that my wife and I are thinking about having a second one. So given all this, why does this myth perpetuate that there is no money in writing fiction? Well, it's because guys like this. See this guy? He published in October 2016, and in however many years and months it's been, he has literally not made a single sale or had a single customer review. In fact, Amazon ranks your book out of 4 million books. So this means this guy is doing worse than 4 million other books on Amazon. And he's not the only one. Unfortunately, it is quite common to throw your book onto Amazon and for it to literally go nowhere. All that effort, all that work and getting your book done, and it's essentially the equivalent of just throwing it into a black hole. So why? Why does this guy fail so abysmally when other authors just do so phenomenally well? Well, let's start by asking why authors succeed. And it's like, what do top-selling authors have in common? So there's a bunch of things that they have in common, but let's kind of look at it one by one. So, as an author, as a fiction author, you make one promise to your audience and one promise only, and that is, I will entertain you. So what do top-selling authors do to fulfill this promise? Well, there's a bunch of stuff, but there's one thing in particular that young fledgling writers can do to achieve great success, and it is this. It is structure. So this is the lesson that Chandler is talking about, and we're going to cover it in lesson 2 in just a moment, but I want to talk about one more thing before we get there. You see, what else can you do in order to achieve success as a fiction author? Well, let's start by asking ourselves this. Why does someone like Stephen King release bestseller after bestseller, even when some of his books aren't the best? That's because people believe that they will be entertained by every subsequent book he releases because he has street cred. He has enough kind of testimonials and reviews that we know that when we read a book from Stephen King, we are going to be somewhat entertained. And it makes sense. I mean, would you read a full-length novel that takes 15 plus hours without some kind of guarantee of result? So what can we do to kind of help bridge that gap in a reader's mind that we're worth taking a risk on, that we're worth reading? And part of the answer is producing regularly. Okay, so in other words, regularly releasing books. And I know that some of you are going, wait a minute, I haven't even published my first book. How am I supposed to release regularly? Well, we're going to cover that in lesson 3. But a spoiler alert is that you can release shorter pieces. And again, we'll cover that in lesson 3. So does that sound good? All right.
Yeah, man, this is awesome.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so here's the truth. Fiction can make money. There are ways to jumpstart your career, and we will cover that in lesson 3. And you don't have to be Hemingway to sell. You just have to tell a good, structured story. So let's move on to lesson number 2, which is structure, or in other words, the 5-step writing formula anyone can follow to write a great story. This is honestly where the magic is. Okay, so myth number 2, I'm not good enough. We all feel it. I mean, even the most experienced author has that trepidation when they're about to release that next book or that next book. But the truth is, what if I told you there was a way you can structure your story so that at the very least, readers will walk away from your book feeling satisfied, if not a lifelong fan. And you don't have to be Hemingway to do it. So all stories share the same 5 milestones. It was understanding this, that with the exception of some experimental fiction, every story, be it a movie, a TV show, a book, or series, share the same 5 fundamental milestones. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. But first, I wanted to share with you how I came to this realization. So, do you recognize this painting? This is one of Picasso's paintings, and it's something that I suspect most of us could probably do. So why is Picasso so famous for literally drawing lines that aren't even straight? My mother's a painter, and when I was a teenager, I remembered asking her why Picasso was so famous when essentially his work wasn't very good. And what followed was a rant like I had never experienced from my mother before. I mean, it was literally as if I had slapped her in the face. She was so mad at me. She started talking about Picasso's upbringing, his history, all this kind of information about Picasso that I really didn't care to know. And it all boiled down to this. This is one of Picasso's early pieces. And as you can see, it is near photorealism. And it's not just this one. If you check out Picasso's blue and red periods, you'll see dozens of realistic paintings from this guy. The point is, Picasso knew how to draw. And he didn't just know, he was a master at it. And once Picasso understood the fundamentals of arts, once he mastered them, that's when he started to play with the rules. And so often I've had fiction students coming to me with great ideas. I mean, truly phenomenal ideas that they couldn't execute because they didn't understand story structure. There's almost no profession where you can get away with not knowing the fundamentals. I mean, think about it. Would you go to a doctor, hire a carpenter or electrician, or work with a computer programmer who didn't understand the fundamentals? So why should writers be any different? Like, why do you get a pass just because you've written a bunch of emails over your lifetime? The truth is, young fiction writers fail when they don't apply the fundamentals to their stories. And a cornerstone fundamental piece is the 5 milestones. Now, don't get me wrong. There are other fundamentals that you need to understand. But if you, at the very least, understand the 5 milestones, you will be able to write something that people will want to read. So here are the 5 milestones. The 5 milestones are how we digest stories. Because they are part of pretty much every movie and every book we read, it is how we learn to digest it. So when one of the milestones are missing, we literally don't know how to kind of understand the story. And as an audience, as a reader, it kind of all falls apart and we don't enjoy it. If the 5 moments are there, people will like your story. You don't necessarily need to write the most exciting story, the craziest story with that, 6th sense plot twist in order to engage them. You just need to tell a compelling story, and these 5 moments will help you do that. It works for plotters and pantsers. So, what's a plotter? A plotter is someone who needs to know everything about their book before they start writing it. A famous example of a plotter is James Patterson. He's the most highly paid author in the world. At least he was last year. I think he still is. And as opposed, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have pantsers. Now, pantsers are people who have a vague idea of where their story is going, maybe a couple characters in mind, and that's just about it. And they start writing and they pull their story together on the fly. So famous examples of pantsers are Stephen King and George R.R. Martin. But the truth is that James Patterson and Stephen King are 2 extremes on the plotter-pantser spectrum. Most of us fall somewhere in between. And what's more, if you're just starting out writing, if you're on your first book, perhaps even your second or third book, you're still figuring out if you truly are a plotter or pantser and where on that spectrum you lie. And using the 5 milestones works for pretty much anyone because it is that roadmap that will help you get it done. It is the DNA of great stories. The 5 milestones, I kind of think of it as that Frankenstein monster. And if you don't have all 5 milestones, well, Frankenstein ain't walking. And it is the foundation of writing a great story quickly, and it defeats writer's block. Because when you have these 5 moments in your story, you know where you're going from point A to point B to point C. So you're able to kind of tackle that story quickly, and you're not going to wallow in a, what's next? What do I do next? What's what is the goal that the character is trying to achieve? Because that is mapped out for you. All right. So the truth is anyone can tell a great story if they understand the fundamentals, and let's cover them now. So I'm going to explain the 5 milestones in relation to the Hunger Games. So I figure most of us have either read the Hunger Games or seen the movie. If you haven't, spoiler alert, I'm going to ruin it for you. Actually, I'm not going to ruin it for you. I'm going to make it even more interesting because as soon as this webinar is over, go find a copy of the Hunger Games, the movie or the book, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. So just a quick overview. What are the 5 milestones? You have the setup. This is where we tell the reader what kind of story we are telling. So is it a drama? Is it a mystery? Is it a Western? This is where we're setting up story expectations, and we're telling them how we are going to fulfill that promise of, I will entertain you. So the thing about the setup is that once you kind of set the stage for your book, you can't deviate too far from it. So for example, if you're writing a comedy, you can't just kind of halfway dive off of the black cliff of, drama and despair. And if you're writing a drama, you can't digress into a slapstick comedy. That doesn't mean a drama can't have comedy and a comedy can't have drama. It just means that whatever expectations you're setting up in that initial foray, in that initial introduction to your story and characters, you can't deviate too far after it. The next milestone is the inciting incident. This is where the true plot line, the true adventure of your story begins. And the definition of the inciting incident is that it is an event that happens to your main character, after which your main character's life will never be the same. And from working with dozens and dozens of students, I will say that this is probably the place where most young fiction writers make the mistake. They do not make the inciting incident big enough. It is somehow reversible. For example, an inciting incident that is poorly done is that your hero gets fired from their job. Well, that's not a big deal because you just kind of wallow in unemployment for a while. You do job hunt, and then eventually you find that next job. Or your hero gets sick. But again, that's not a big deal because quite often we can recover from illnesses. And so again, your hero is returning to what they were before. An inciting incident must be irreversible, final, destructive, and insane. All right, the next one is the first slap. This is the moment where we take our hero and we do the worst thing we can imagine to them. And I tell you, the successful authors, the ones who will really make it in this game, are the ones who can embrace their sadomasochism and truly punish their hero. Then we go to the second slap, but there's hope. So the difference between the first slap and the second slap is, again, with the second slap, we are truly trying to devastate our hero, but there's hope. There's something that happens that's mixed into the second slap that our hero has some chance to reverse their ill fortune and find a way out. And then finally, we have the climax, and there are only 2 rules to the climax. Rule number 1 is that it must somehow connect to the inciting incident. And rule number 2 is that it must be kick ass. All right, so let's dive into the Hunger Games. So what are the 5 milestones? Okay, so the first thing is the story promise. So it starts with Katniss waking up. She's in a shack. It's obvious that she's from a very poor family. She's in a very poor area. She gets up, she goes into the living room, and we see that her mother is suffering from some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder, and that her little sister is completely dependent on Katniss. So we see that this is a drama, and this is a family drama where Katniss is the matriarch of the family, and it's a really harsh thing to do to a teenager. But then Katniss steps out of the shack, and we see hovercrafts, and we see people basically dressed like stormtroopers, and we realize that this is the future. So poor, family tragedy, future. This is the setup of the story. Then we get to the inciting incident where nothing will be the same. Now with the Hunger Games, the inciting incident is very obvious. It is I volunteer. And with the I volunteer, her life will never be the same. Because once she enters the games, either she will die, so her life will never be the same. It can never return to what it was. Or she will be, she'll live, she'll win the games. In other words, she will have to have killed several other tributes in order to survive. And let's be honest, your life is never the same after that either. So then we get to the first slap. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they do. Now, in between the inciting incident and the first slap, your character needs to be making gains and losses, gains and losses, gains and losses. But the net value should be positive. So with the Hunger Games, she's making friends with Haymitch and Peeta. She is the girl on fire. She's getting noticed by the Capitol, only for it all to be brought down back to zero when she actually enters the games. So now we go to the second slap. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, it just got worse and worse and worse, but there's hope. So with the Hunger Games, that is the moment when an announcement is made that 2 people can survive the games if they are from the same district. She goes looking for Peeta only to discover that he's dying. He won't even make it through the night, let alone through the games. But there's hope because there's that second announcement made that there's something at the cornucopia that they need. All right, and then we hit the climax, which is, remember, 2 rules. Tie it to the inciting incident. So in this case, I volunteer. In other words, does Katniss survive the Hunger Games or not? So we have to answer that question. And then we also have to make it kick ass, which is buries anyone. And of course, anyone who's seen the movie or read the book knows exactly what I'm talking about. One of the most kick-ass ways to end an already very dramatic movie or book, both fantastic. All right, so it works with the Hunger Games, but as you'll see, it works with other stories as well. With The Matrix, we have the opening scene with Trinity. We know that this is a sci-fi action adventure. Then, of course, that iconic scene, the red pill or the blue pill, in which Neo's life will never be the same. Then Morpheus is captured. He is the leader of the rebellion. How can we live without Morpheus? And then there's the betrayal, but we know where Morpheus is. There's hope. We're going to go launch a rescue mission, only for it to end with the epic battle with the agent and us learning that Neo is the one. But let's go back in time. It also works with the classics like Romeo and Juliet. the Montagues and the Capulets fight scene. We have the inciting incident where Romeo sees Juliet at a party. And then the milestone 3 is when Tybalt kills Mercutio, and the Montagues Capulet tensions at an all-time high. So we don't think that Romeo and Juliet can ever be together. Things get better, but then Romeo goes off and kills Tybalt. Romeo, why did you do that? And he's banished. But there are plans being made to get these lovebirds together. And then finally, we end with the suicide of Romeo and Juliet. All right. The 5 milestones works. And, again, working with so many students, we have Chris who says, I highly recommend following the 5 milestones and being very clear with your premise. After coaching, I took my disorganized cozy into a series with a fun premise coming out of May. I already have plans for a spin-off series. And Kim writes, I didn't work with Rami on my first novel, and after spending a few years writing my manuscript, this time I followed Rami's advice, and working with him one-on-one, I was able to write the first draft of my second manuscript in just over 2 months. So she went from years of trying to write a manuscript to writing one in 2 months. All right, so what is the truth? The truth is that the 5 milestones are how we digest stories. Not only do they work, but not using them doesn't work. They're what makes your writing pop, and using them tripled my writing speed. All right, let's go into lesson 3. The 1%
Hey, real quick, Rami. I know, and I know we're in the home stretch here. And this is awesome. So I just wanted to quickly check in with folks. I'd love to hear from you. Does this make sense? Are you guys tracking with us? Does the 5 story milestones make sense? Are you guys getting some notes? Can you kind of see how you could use this to develop your story, to triple your writing speed, as Rami said? Awesome. Raymond, good info and makes sense. Theresa, yes. Kara, yes. Isabel, totally. Jennifer, yes, I like the way you broke it down. Yes, very good. Makes perfect sense to me. Amazing. Hell yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Sophia. This is brilliant. Awesome hustle. Awesome. So we're gonna go into one final lesson. We'll wrap up about the hour mark, and then we're gonna go into Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, you can save those and post those, and we'll stay on for about a half hour at the hour mark for Q&A. So let's dive into lesson number 3.
All right. So here's the 1% changes I made that gave me 13 extra hours a week. So myth number 3, it takes years to write a book. That's simply not true. The 5 milestones will keep you on track. A novel doesn't have to be 100,000 words, and the slowest typer in the world probably types around 3,600 words an hour. And the reason why I say probably is because you really have to be one of those single finger, keyboard peckers. So let's look at it. Does a novel have to be 100,000 words? No. The truth is that a novella is anywhere between 20,000 and 50,000 words, and certain genres lend themselves to shorter pieces. So, for example, cozy mysteries, some kinds of romances, young adult in many instances. A lot of books, depending on the genre and depending on exactly how you're tackling the story, it's actually better to write it shorter than longer. You can write short stories that can kind of fill your publishing schedule. So you can, like, for example, release a novel, then release a short story, then release another novel. This will help you kind of build that street cred and get those books on your shelf. And you can divide a novel. In other words, you can turn a 100,000 word novel into 5 novellas. And in fact, that's what I did with my first book. I took my 84,000 word novel and divided it into 4 books, which gave me my initial kind of mailing list signups, my initial reviews, and helped me get noticed by readers. So if you don't believe that you can write a book in 90 days or less, just let's take a look at this guy. This guy releases a book every 60 days, and he's not the only one. There are other people out there who release a book every month, and some people even release more than that. Now, yeah, granted, They're probably on the shorter end of it, 30, 40,000 words a month, but they're still managing to produce book after book after book. And then let's not forget Kim, who spent years writing her first book. She went from years to writing her second book in 2 months. So it's definitely doable. Now, I know what you're saying. I have 10 kids, 13 jobs, and a mother-in-law that insists I throw a 7-course meal every Sunday. I don't have the time. So you do, and I promise you do, and let's get practical. Okay, so promise me, if I show you a way to gain at least 6 extra hours a week, you'll use it for writing. All right, guys, seriously, promise me.
I promise, Rami.
I know you will, Chad.
And you guys can drop it in the chat box.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Awesome. Promise. Pinky
for sure.
swear.
Pinky
Awesome.
Swear. Awesome.
I love it. I love it. All right, here we go. I call this the 1% changes. I'll spare you the details as to where this came from, but basically the logic was that my wife and I were looking at our lives, and we realized that basically all we did was work, take care of the little monster, and sleep. And we wanted to get some time back. And so what we did was we did the 1% changes. In other words, we took a look at our lives. We looked at what was consuming the most of the most of our time, and we tried to find simple solutions to get back time. So the first thing we did was we got rid of anything that couldn't go into the dishwasher. We estimate that saves us at least 20 minutes a day in washing up. So already just from that one move, we got 2 hours and 20 minutes a week. Then we consolidated laundry. So we have a little kid. He needs all his laundry done on nuclear hot washes. So we basically got a lot of our clothes to also be on nuclear hot washes. Cuts down about 2 loads a week. And that gave us roughly about 40 minutes a week. So we're at 3 hours. Double meals. Every Sunday, I cook my famous spaghetti bolognese. I cook enough to feed us on Sunday and usually one more day in the week. We usually have it on Wednesday. So that's 2 meals done in the time that it takes to cook one. And that saves us an additional hour a week. So that's 4 hours. Now I do this babysitting club. So there are 2 other families nearby who have kids the same age as mine. So every weekend I will watch, my kid and their 2 kids for 2 hours. And then I'll hand over my kid to them to be watched by them for 4 hours because there are 2 more families. And so that's 4 hours. That's 8 hours already. I got a second monitor. Now, I cannot emphasize this enough. If you are spending your day on your computer, working on your computer, whatever it is, that second monitor will just increase productivity in ways you cannot imagine. And I estimate this gives me about 2 hours a week of, just that kind of day-to-day tasks that I have to do that are just done so much faster and so much more efficiently. And then we hired a cook with my book money. So we live near a catering school, so we put up an ad for a student cook who comes in once a week and does about 2 meals for us plus lunches for the week. That saves us at least 3 hours because she also does the grocery shopping. So already we're at 13 hours, and that doesn't include the ton of 1% changes that we've done, little things that save 10, 15 minutes here and there, but when you do them all together, they add up. All of it just under 14 hours. And I promise you, if you do the same, you will be able to get those hours as well. Just take an honest look at your life, see where you're spending the most time, and figure out ways to get it. I mean, you want to be a writer, get creative. Well, creativity is your lifeblood, and this is how you get it done. I promise it works. And don't just take my word for it. Most of us know Sean Sumner. He is famous in his own right. He's the guy who runs the SPS community. And he just kind of seeing me talking about the 1% changes, just did the dishwasher and double meals thing. And he estimates that he gets 3.5 hours a week from those 2 simple changes. So the truth. Anyone can type 3,600 words an hour, and dictating is even faster. A novel doesn't have to be 100,000 words plus. You can write a novel in 90 days, as was shown by the author plus Kim plus myself. And this simple technique that I just went through, the 1% changes, unearthed 13 plus hours for me, and I'm sure it will do similar things for you as well. All right, so just going over the 3 secrets again really quickly. All the money is in fiction, and having that mindset will give you the discipline and also the motivation and enthusiasm to get this done. The 5-step writing formula is really going to help you stay on course and create a story that works. And the 1% changes will give you the time that you need to get it done. So you remember this? Why authors fail? No confidence, no time, no discipline, no support, don't understand story fundamentals. Well, you can see how, there you go. We just put it all on its head. So confidence in your story, the 5 milestones will give you the confidence. The 1% will give you all the the 1% changes will give you all the time you need. Knowing it's possible will help you build your discipline. And as for story fundamentals, the 5 milestones is probably the most important fiction fundamental out there. And as for support, well, there's no better place than SPS, and things are about to get much, much, much better for us fictioneers. But more on that later. Just know it's going to be epic. So I can imagine this presentation felt like this. So remember how I told you that about Chandler's challenge and how the SPS team, Chandler and I, put together a special program to help you write amazing fiction that sells? Well, I'd like to show that you now. Can I have your permission to do so?
Let's do it.
All right, good stuff. Yes, good info. Awesome, awesome. All right, so all you need to write fiction and how to sell it. We have created a program that has an online membership portal. Basically, it's video training by me. There's over 15 hours of video training that runs you through the fundamentals. Basically, it's an A to Z step process to get this done. The video training includes PDFs, outlines, workbooks, and even templates that you can use throughout the entire process. We have weekly webinars and unlimited email consulting, and I'm particularly proud of this because what we do is we have our own Facebook community. In fact, we have a dedicated Agile I Got Your Back community, and every week you can post your questions in a weekly thread that we set up. And then on Saturdays at 12 p.m. EST, I run through all the answers. Now, whether it takes me 10 minutes to answer your questions or 3 hours, it doesn't matter. I will go through it to the end. And because it's a Facebook Live event, you'll be able to ask additional questions. You'll be able to ask for clarification. And if I don't know the answer to one of your questions, well, no problem. As we say in Scotland, nae bother, because what I'll do is I'll go off, I'll research it, figure it out, approach the SPS team. We have so many amazing people in SPS that just really are experts in so many different fields, and I'll get that answer for you, and I'll answer it in the following week. And you also get 6 one-on-one coaching calls with an expert in your genre, whether that's coaching calls with me or one of our other coaches. Really, we want to pair you with the absolute best person to help you get it done. But regardless of what genre you're writing in, it always starts with a 1-hour plot call with me. And basically what we do is in that 1-hour call, we are going to go through your 5 milestones, and we're going to make sure that you start this program absolutely on the right foot. In other words, I'm going to make sure that these 5 milestones work. I'm not going to be the friendliest guy about it. I'm going to be deadly honest with you, but you'll be able to walk away from that call with confidence that you have a roadmap to a story that works. And as for the plot calls, well, that is a part of the program that I just keep getting amazing feedback on, as you can see from Sammy, Mickey, and dozens of others. So let's take a little slightly deeper look into the program. We go into writing. And so in the writing section, I designed the course so that not only will you be able to write your book as you are learning the fundamentals, but you will also be able to apply those fundamentals just in everything, basically in all the works that you're going to do from the future moving forward. And because it's a lifelong access to the membership portal, you will be able to refer to those lessons again and again and again for, basically for lifetime. And of course, I will be updating them and adding to them as need be. Editing. So we want to make sure that we get the fundamentals down right. And then publishing and promoting. So basically, what do we do once that rough draft is done? We go through the editing process, and then we go through the publishing and promoting process. But that's not it. We also go into the business of writing. What does it take to be a full-time author? And how, here are some steps and some things that you can be doing to help you get you there. We'll also go into extra resources. There's a ton of stuff out there. A lot of it is free that will, that will make your author career easier, more streamlined, more efficient. And then, of course, the expert channel. I think that's probably my favorite part because I get to interview people who are experts on writing, editing, marketing, on everything. And I share those interviews with you. And as for the community, well, to be more exact, what we've created is this. We have created an active elite team that has each other's back, is proactive in succeeding, and is willing to take strong, massive action toward helping each other become successful full-time authors. In other words, think of us as a SEAL Team 5 or the ultimate quilting circle. My wife is part of one of those, and they are fierce. So will you join us in the trenches? Here's just a little bit more about what people are saying about the program. Kathy Baker writes, after having gone through it, my own stories just started flowing. Kat wrote that I was able to finish the story that I've been working on for the previous 3 years and had only completed a third of it. Now it is finished and ready to go, and it rocks. And John writes, after going through Rami's explanation of the fundamentals of fiction, I feel far more confident to conquer my own stories. And they're not alone. Look, I know this system gets results. SPS has been around for a long time. We've been helping literally thousands of students achieve their publishing dreams. And in the last year alone, we've helped Kat, who I quoted, Emma Ashley, who you saw earlier, who's earning over $3,000 a month in passive income. Wendy Vanderbold, who's just an amazing author who does both nonfiction and fiction. She writes a series of children fiction books and has gone further. She's now writing a cozy mystery series. And then, of course, memoirs. If you're writing a memoir, this course is for you. Memoirs have way more similarity with fiction than nonfiction. The challenge with memoirs is finding the 5 milestones and essentially a true story. So you have to, but it doesn't exempt you from getting those 5 milestones and kind of using the fundamentals of fiction in order to tell your story. And then, of course, Kathy Pieper with her phenomenal launch. So who else does this work for? Anyone who's ever dreamed of writing fiction but hasn't found the time to do so? Anyone who wants to be a full-time author? People who are writing memoirs, children books, or want to use storytelling to inspire their tribes. In fact, we have a few nonfiction peeps in the first iteration of the fundamentals of fiction who aren't writing a novel, but are writing inspirational stories and are trying to inspire their tribes to be better or accomplish more, and realize that understanding the fundamentals of storytelling is a great asset in achieving that. And then finally, anyone who wants to write a kick-ass novel off of their bucket list. And what about children's fiction? Well, we got you covered. So these are just a few of the titles that were published with Fundamentals of Fiction children's authors. And we also have Marcy Pousset, who is a phenomenal children's writer who is brought on as the children writers coach and kind of mentor in the program. And then, of course, we have the most famous graduate of SPS, Emma, 8 years old, published The Fairies of Waterfall Island, $4,000 in sales in 3 months, was interviewed by basically everyone under the sun. She is just rocking it, and she's only 8. She's working on her second book right now. And the last thing I want to address, the last thing I want to address is this. And this is something that comes up over and over again. And it's that the timing isn't right to write a book. Now, I know that you may be thinking this, but I'd like to just kind of point out two things. First of all, this is a second release. In other words, we're doing an application process. We're not going to let everyone in, and we're purposely keeping the numbers low so that we can have an intimate, active, strong community, but also so that I have the bandwidth to work with all of you one-on-one. As this program grows and grows and grows, eventually we're going to have to change that so that I won't have the ability to work with everyone one-on-one. That is not true of this release, but will be true of future releases. So that's one thing I really want you to consider when deciding if the timing is right or not. But the other thing I wanted to say, and this is something that truly, I think rings true for us all, and it's something that you really have to kind of keep in mind. And it's this: there will never be a good enough time to start writing. Hell, I started with a pregnant wife, no job, and living 4,000 miles away from any family. It's not about timing, and I'm sorry to say it never was. All right, guys, so that is it. That is the shtick. We are looking for people who are, as I said, it's an application process. We're not accepting everyone. So we're looking for people who are serious about making it, who are engaged, active, supportive, and receptive, who are able to learn from failures and share successes, who are fearless and who are ready to join a movement, and finally are willing to wade in the trenches with me. So will you join us in the trenches? Now I'm going to hand this over to Chandler right now because he's going to explain the application process a little bit further.
Awesome, Rami. Now you can hear me still, Rami?
I can, yes.
Great, perfect. So this was awesome, really, really helpful. I hope that you guys found this helpful. This has just been really great. I know people have a ton of notes. So just kind of explaining what to do next. So as Rami mentioned, we previously launched the Fundamentals of Fiction program, and we had about 100 students that went through it last fall. Now, we've got a ton of finished manuscripts, successful books, and really, really happy students. So this is the second class. Now, we're going to be going through this class over the next 90 to 120 days. And as Rami mentioned, it includes those training videos, the plot call, which is really, really helpful. If you've been confused about your story and things like that, that's going to be helpful there. You're going to have 6 one-on-one calls with your coach. And really, I mean, the end result is you're getting this book done and you're publishing it successfully. So if this is something that you're interested in, let me tell you kind of what to do next. So there should be a link. It just popped up in the chat box. What I want you to do is click the orange button. Click the orange button and book a call. And basically the way this process is going to work is, as Rami mentioned, we're looking for people who are motivated, who are ready to get this thing done, who are decisive, and really serious about this. So we don't want to work with people who aren't serious about getting this fiction book done and doing it the right way. So if that's you, click the link, click to book a call, and then you're going to see something like this. So you're going to go over onto the next page. And you'll just go with me right now, click that orange button. It says book a call. You should see something like this. Now there's going to be a video above this, but there's going to be a time. A calendar that comes up and it'll load, and you should see some time slots. Now there will be times today and times tomorrow. You're going to book a 30 to 45-minute call. You find a time that works best for you. And then step 1 is to book the call. Step 2 is to fill out the application. It's very, very important that you fill out step 2 in the application, because that's how we start to get a sense of who you are and if you're a fit for the program. So click that. You're going to want to book a call as soon as possible today or as soon as possible tomorrow. The last time we opened up enrollment to this program, it sold out in less than 72 hours. So this will sell out over the next couple days. We also have a fast action bonus that we're going to tell you about in just 1 second. And that's if you decide to book a call right here on this webinar, and then you get on the call and you decide to purchase the program purchase the program on the call. Then we've got some really cool fast action bonuses, which we'll tell you about in a second. So you can click over to the orange book a call button. You'll go here. And then Rami, if you'll hop to the next slide, once you book a call, you should see something like this. And that's, yep, there it is. And that'll set expectations for the call. Now, very, very important, make sure that if you book a call, you show up. These call slots are going to book up really fast. And they always do. And we don't want you to take the time of someone else that could have booked by booking it a call and not showing up. So make sure that you show up. And basically the purpose of this call is to see if you're a good fit, to see if you're qualified to work with us, and then to see if we feel like we can help you, because we want to make sure that you're a great fit for the program. We only want to work with people who are motivated, but also with people who we know we can get really great results with your book. So that's the process. We'll talk about your goals with your book. We'll talk about where you're at with the book. We'll talk about the details of the program. We'll talk about cost, payment plans, stuff like that. Just kind of give you a ballpark. It's a couple $1,000, kind of in that range, 2 to 4 is what we're looking at. And that's what we'll talk about. So if this is you, if you're saying, hey, I am interested in at least having a conversation, booking a call is not saying, hey, I'm 100% going to show up. It's just saying, hey, I want to talk about my book and see if this is a good fit and see if I'm a fit to work with you guys. Then what I'd like you to do is click that orange book a call button right now. So go ahead and click that button, go over to the page, find a time, and then fill out your application, and then come back in the chat and just type, I booked a call. Okay. So as soon as you book a call, type I booked a call. And like I said, you're going to find times that are available later today, I think in as soon as an hour. And then also tomorrow, pick the soonest time that works for you. Because again, once we fill up the slots in this program, it'll be sold out. So, we want to keep this as an intimate class like we did last time. And we can only help so many people. So if this is something that you're interested in, then go ahead and book a call as soon as possible. And then Rami, you want to flip the screen over. Joe says, I'm filling out the application now. Manuela says, I booked a call. Love it. Joshua Kelly says, I booked a call.
Nice.
Cool. So there's 2 fast action bonuses. I mentioned this a second ago. So when you book a call on this webinar, there's 2 fast action bonuses. Now, for everyone who, like it says here, fills out the application and books a call, and if you're accepted into the program and you decide to purchase the program on that call, then number 1, I'm going to personally promote your book to our following. So 95,000 plus people on our Facebook page and the Self-Publishing School community. And then number 2, if you'll hop to the next slide, Rami, there's an exclusive training on how to hit the New York Times bestseller or USA Today bestseller list with 2 of our coaches. So with Rami and also with Lise, who are a couple of our coaches. So this is only for people who go ahead and book a call right now, and for people who end up deciding to enroll and enroll on that call. So again, if this is something that you feel like is potentially a fit, and if you'd like to talk more about your book, the plan for your book, and whether or not you're a fit to work with us, and whether or not this program is a fit for you, then all you need to do is click the orange book a call button. Now you can skip to the next page, Rami. You click that orange book a call button, or you can type self-publishingschool.com/fiction in your browser. That'll direct you to the correct page. And then once you've booked the call, come back in the chat and just comment, I booked a call. It looks like we've got a ton of people who have already booked a call with us here, which is super exciting. And we're going to be closing registration again as soon as all of these slots fill up this week. So I think we had some of our alumni that joined us. So I think we're already about 30 to 40% of the way full with our spots. So we're excited to have kind of the second program. Awesome. Theresa booked. Okay, now what we're going to do as well is if you have any questions about the program or about anything that we've talked about today, you can go ahead and post your questions in the chat box. We're going to hang out here for the next 25 to 30 minutes. and answer any and all of your questions. All right, I'm just pulling up some of the questions here. And a couple people asked about a replay. We're going to send out a replay in just a couple hours. So you don't have to worry about that. If you want to come back and watch this or things like that, you can come back and watch and re-go back through the webinar. All right, I'm going back in the questions here. I'll read some of these out for you. Rami. Oh, Theresa says, because of your 5 milestones, I now have an idea to break my original novel into 3 to 4 novellas. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great technique. And I cover this in more detail in the course, obviously, but just one quick word of warning. When you do that, make sure that the first book tells a complete story. There's some resolution. You don't want to piss off your early readers by kind of like dropping them off a cliff. But anyway, I do cover that in more detail.
Awesome. Sue says, can you talk a little bit more about the ups and downs in step 3?
The ups and downs in step 3, sure. So between, I'm assuming you mean milestone 3. So between milestone 2 and milestone 3, your hero needs to be having gains and losses, gains and losses, gains and losses, but the net value has to be positive. So in the Hunger Games, Katniss is having gains, right? She's making friends with Peeta, with Haymitch, with that crazy woman. May the odds forever be in your favor. She's getting noticed by the Capitol. She's the girl on fire. You know, all in all, she's actually doing very well. But all of that means nothing when she enters the games. Again, you know, you have to keep in mind it is one of the fundamentals of storytelling, the 5 milestones. There are other fundamentals, one of which is basically how to write a good scene and how to digest that good scene. And that's something I cover in the course. And basically you'll see with that lesson, when you're looking at the scene, you know, it's action, reaction, basically cycle, that, you know, you can have positive values or negative values within a scene. You just have to make sure the aggregate is positive.
Love it. Let's see. Joe, call scheduled, smiley face. Love it. Sherman booked a call. Looks like we got more people booking a call. As soon as you book a call, click that orange button and then just comment in the chat. So if you just booked a call with us, find a time that works later today or first thing tomorrow. And once you book that call, I'd love to hear from you. Just comment in the chat and say, I booked a call. Let's see. Belinda asked, how often do you offer the course per year? So this is only the second time that we've ever offered this course. And again, what Rami mentioned is we're still very much in like the hands-on phase of building this with you guys in the trenches. So there is no guarantee that we'll ever launch this again. This is kind of like there's no lifetime contracts at SPS, and we are always just focused on what's right in front of us and helping the students that are in the program. So we're doing a second pilot of this, and if it goes really well, we'll do it again and again and again. And so but we can't guarantee that we'll launch this again at this time.
Yeah, second
Mark,
baby.
I've booked second baby coming up too. That's going to take some time. Catherine booked a call. Mark, I've booked a call. Love it. And I'm seeing some more questions in here. So let's see. Isabel, I'm still in school and live in a big family. So any tips on juggling school, family, responsibilities, and writing?
Yeah, and honestly, again, this is something that we cover a lot, and the community is really amazing about this because really it is about setting your priorities and having that bigger yes. And so if writing is the big yes in your life, if it is truly the thing you really want, then you should be doing it first. Wake up early, get the writing done right out of the bat. And one thing I love about the community is that, you know, it's a perfect platform for you to complain about family and school and kind of get that support and get those tips from other people who are sharing your experience with you that can kind of show you some good guidelines. But the big tip that I can give you right here and now is, you know, set aside 1 or 2 hours first thing in the morning every morning and get your writing done first.
Love it. Great answer. Let's see. Christina, how quickly will others find my book? I'm guessing she's meaning once she launches it.
It depends on how you launch it, and it depends on the kind of support that you get with the launch. Again, we kind of cover a step-by-step launch process in the portal, and then also you have the community to support your launch. And again, on the weekly question and answer, also the weekly question and answer, but also the coaching calls, we can get really specific into your launch and your book needs. Different genres have different places that you need to go hunting for readers. And that's always something that you have to kind of keep in mind, because it's not just about getting your mom and her, reading group to buy it. It's about getting the right kind of readers to buy it. So.
Love it. Cool. Oh, this is awesome. This just came in, and then I'll go back to some questions that are kind of in the queue here. Mark, Tamara said, scheduled my call for tomorrow. Yay. Mark says, really looking forward to getting started tomorrow, but even more excited about getting finished. I am so excited. I'm finally going to write that book that I've always dreamed I would for the last 30 years. Mark, yes, that's awesome. I can't tell you how happy this makes me and how many people I've heard this from. And so if you're on this webinar right now and you can relate to Mark, or really a lot of others who said, hey, I've been dreaming about doing this for a really long time. It's time to make this happen. I would just really, really suggest that you click that orange button, go over onto that page, find a time that works for you today or tomorrow, book a call with us to chat about your book and to see if the Fundamentals of Fiction program is right for you. I was just not speaking at an event this weekend. I was working an event this weekend, and it was so cool because I talked to so many people that they said, okay, I've been working on this book for 4 years, or I've been thinking about this book for a lifetime. And I could just tell that they really genuinely cared about helping people. And I was like, oh man, I can't wait to work with you and we had all these people who were joining the program because I knew that we could help them. And that's where we come in, is we take that book that you've been dreaming about for years, maybe even decades, and we help make that a reality. And not just us, and not just through this plot call with Rami, these coaching calls, the accountability, all that, but the community, which is just a really valuable piece of this, is you're going to be surrounded by like-minded people who are doing the same thing as you are, right? Jim Rohn, he famously says, you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And so what I love kind of about bringing together this second class of the fiction program is that you're going to be surrounded by really motivated people, but also people who are struggling with the same exact things that you are. And that can help you through those things that you can relate to. And you're not just like the crazy one at the family reunion, talk about this fiction book, right? There's other people that can relate to that and relate to your ambition. I see Chris just said scheduled a call. Amanda signed up for this afternoon. Love it. That's awesome. Amelia scheduled my call in 30 minutes. That's awesome. I'm glad that was available. Looks like a bunch of our slots are booking up now. So if you haven't already, click that link, go ahead and book a call. Let's see. Kizzy says, hello, maybe a bit of a long shot, but if you want to write the books from a villain's point of view, still the same 5 milestones?
Yeah, absolutely. But you still need to give the reader a hero to root for. So a really amazing, but it's a horror movie, I warn you, is watch M. Night Shyamalan, I always say his name wrong, movie Split. That is pretty much from the villain's point of view. But you still have a character to root for. And that is, so yes, you can write it from a villain's point of view. So either give the villain a noble purpose or have someone they can root for in the story if the villain's going down at the end. Again, one of the things that we talk about in the course is how to get unstuck if you're stuck. And one of the best things to do if you're stuck is to basically go through the 5 milestones from your villain's perspective. So it's a really great way to get unstuck when you're not sure what to do next. But I mean, that's just one of the kind of mini things that we talk about of getting unstuck. So
awesome. Question from Ashoka. Question, how do you have tips or do you have tips for how to combine / meld various plotting methods? I have the groundwork done, my main plot and turning points established, and lots of backstory for my characters, but I still have to fill in. I still have a lot to fill in. The mini scenes in between those points, basically the bulk of the book. I'm finding help with different plotting methods, but I'm struggling some since I'm trying to build on what I've already done rather than redoing it 5 different ways.
So there are 2 things. Number one, I don't know if you remember in the very beginning when my video was on, if you saw all the Post-it notes were on the wall to the left of me. So I find that if you kind of brainstorm scenes and kind of go from the perspective of what are some amazing scenes you can include in your book, and I do it as Post-it notes, and I kind of do a beautiful mind thing on the wall with a bunch of Post-it notes. So if I ever go crazy, that's the evidence. The second thing is that it sounds like you might be a bit of a pantser. Again, this is something that you have to really kind of consider, and this is where the community can be really helpful and encouraging, is that if you've gone through so much plotting and so many different ways to try to get this done, and you're still not sure what scene to do and what scene next to do, it may simply be because you're a pantser and you need to start writing and let your characters tell you what's next.
100%. And Ashoka, this is exactly what this plot call is going to help with. And this is exactly what the coaching calls will help with, to not only hold you accountable, help, with coaching you up on getting the story finished, but then also being around other people who are doing similar things.
In fact, like on a plot call with someone like you, the first thing I would do is question the 5 milestones, because if the 5 milestones are properly lined up, the in-between scenes tend to write themselves.
Yes, the fundamentals. That's why they're called the fundamentals. And that's why this is called the fundamentals of fiction, right? Awesome. Emily just booked a call. Awesome. Wadzani just booked a call. Love it. If you've booked a call so far and you haven't yet commented in the chat, just comment and let us know I booked a call. And if you haven't already, click that orange book a call button. Go ahead and head on over to that page. Find a time that works today or tomorrow. Book a call. You won't regret it. We'll be able to talk about your book on that call. You'll speak with someone from my team. We'll talk about your book, talk about what success looks like for you, see if you're a good fit for the program. And then if you are, and you decide to enroll on that call, we've got that fast action bonus for you, which is the New York Times and USA Today bestseller training from Rami and me promoting your book when it launches. And in addition to just the fact that I've mentioned this multiple times, but I want to make sure we're very clear, is that we do have limited spots. Last time we had to cancel a bunch of calls that were booked later in the week. So like there were a bunch of calls booked for Friday and we had to cancel them because we sold out so quickly and people were upset because they wanted to be in the program, but we capped it and we filled it up and we said no more. So I don't want that to be you. So if you're on the fence or thinking, hey, maybe this is a good fit for me and maybe this will be helpful in getting my book done, then definitely go ahead and book a call. I want to make sure that if you're considering it, and especially for folks who are showing up live on this webinar, like you guys get the first crack at this. And I want to reward you guys for showing up live and for staying to the end. So we want to give you guys the first shot at these slots. So again, if you haven't already, click that link and book a call, and would love to chat with you guys over the next day or so. We're going to take a moment to answer some final questions. And I'm gonna pull these up here. So I'm gonna take a final call for questions. Post your questions in the chat box if you have them. And then also, I'd love to hear from folks if you're on the fence about whether or not the fundamentals of fiction will work for you. So if you're on the fence, just type on the fence in the chat box, and then kind of what the remaining questions that you have about whether or not the program would be a good fit for you. So if you're on the fence, type on the fence in the chat box, or if you haven't booked a call yet, and then, let us know kind of what your final questions are on that. And I booked a call for tomorrow. Love it. let's see. There's a few questions about the story structure that I'm seeing here. Actually, one question from Derek says, if producing short stories between larger works, what do you think about eventually gathering them together and selling as a collection? This is something you've done, right?
Well, yes, I've done that. I would say that short stories, the best kind of use for the short story is kind of plug the holes in your publishing schedule. Again, like when we go into the business of publishing, you have to balance between writing those full-length novels that are the cornerstone of your writing, but also not leaving your fans lingering for months on end for that next book. And so often you can use short stories to plug the holes. So, it depends on how many stories, but I usually write 2 or 3 stories, publish them together to plug the holes. That's how I kind of keep the schedule going.
Cool. Let's see. Lee says, I know science fiction requires a lot of words since you need to be very descriptive. In your opinion, what would be the word count a science fiction novel, what's the word count of a science fiction based self-published novel that he should shoot for?
So it's as long as a piece of string, right? Like there are no conventions to it really. Yes, some sci-fi tends to be quite long because you're being accurate with your science. You really want to kind of give them the science, but others are shorter. I mean, again, like I need to know a lot more details about your book, in the plot call or the coaching calls where we kind of take a look at what it is, because the truth is you might be doing way too much description for the kind of book you're writing. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying that a deeper look is necessary to kind of give you that proper answer.
Cool. Looks like Jolene just booked a call for 7:15 a.m. Thanks for getting up early. Don't miss it. Set 3 alarms. Get there. That's tomorrow. Okay. TC says, can you take the course even if you don't have a story idea yet? Or should you really wait until you have a bit more of a plan?
Actually, that's the fun of the plot call. I love working with guys like you because first of all, when we have our plot call, it's not just a, hey, show up, but I'm actually going to give you an exercise that takes about an hour to do beforehand. That exercise alone will give you a lot of clarity on what you're writing. But if you still don't have an idea, the next step is you can come to me with a cool character. You can come to me with a cool setting. Like it doesn't really matter, but as long as we can have some elements of the story in place, we'll be able to work it together. Now, if the one thing that, I do need though, is a desire to get the book done. Obviously, like you cannot have an idea. That's one thing, but not have an idea and just kind of, we'll see, doesn't really work. If you're excited about just getting it done and you want an idea, yeah, we can work that through, no problem.
Love it. Cool. Looks like we have people, more folks booking a call. If you haven't already, click the orange book a call button and go ahead and book a time that works for you. And we're going to do a final call for questions. So I got some more in the queue that we're going to answer here. So you can go to self-publishingschool.com/fiction or click the orange book a call button. Head on over to that page. I walked through this a little bit earlier, but I'll just recap here. You're going to go over to that page, scroll down a little bit. There's a calendar there. Find a time that works best for you. Click that time. Then it's going to take you to a second step, which is an application. Fill out that application to tell us a little bit more about you and the book that you're writing. And then we'll get on a call. We'll talk about your book, where you're headed, and whether or not the program is a good fit for you. Anne says, I'm not seeing the option to fill out the application. Is there a link for it? So essentially, it's right under the video, and you're going to see a calendar. If you click that, once you click the time, you should see it as part of the second step of the process. It's not a separate link. It's actually all in one. So you book the time, and then right after you see it, it's right there. So it's actually a 2-step process. So find the time and then book the application. And once you fill out the application, that's what officially books your call in the calendar. So once you do that, just comment in the chat. I booked a call. And hopefully you booked a call, found a time later today or tomorrow that works. And again, what I'll mention is this is first come, first served basis. The last time we offered this, it sold out in 72 hours. And we would expect it to be similar this time. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We'll take a couple final questions here. Let's see. Amanda, question, will we be able to get feedback on our current progress? My novel is probably 2/3 complete, but I feel like it's dragging in the middle. Would we get feedback on that?
Absolutely. During the plot call and the coaching calls, you will go through the ins and outs of your story. Also, the community is a fantastic place to go look for beta readers and also get general feedback. One of the things that I encourage people to do as well is on the community to post a 10-minute video about their book and, where you kind of talk it through and see what people say. There are 2 tests to whether or not you have a good story. And when you kind of post it in a community of people who, are dedicated to learning the fundamentals, the first test is, how do they react to kind of that elevator pitch, that 5-minute to 10-minute spiel? And then the second test is, if you send them a chapter, do they ask for chapter 2? So
that's great. Cool. Let's see. Joe says, ready to get started yesterday. Just let me know where to send monthly payment via PayPal, cash, or checks. So we actually don't take PayPal, cash, or checks, ironically enough. We're not in person, so we can't take cash, but we do take credit or debit card, and we could talk about that on the call. Let's see. Ashoka says, thanks for the answer. By the way, I used to be a pantser, but it was stressful and dead-ended me, and I've done better with more plotting. So that's awesome. Ashoka, and I hope you'll book a call because kind of like we were talking about just a second ago, I think we'll be able to help you out in the program. Let's see. I'm writing a romance novel without a chronological order. How can I apply the 5 milestones without changing the time jump structure?
Yeah, and Adzani also had a similar question about structure. And the truth is that, so the short answer is book a plot call. Let's go through your book and let's really get it figured out. Obviously, I need details about who are the characters, why are we jumping timelines? I mean, if you remember the Picasso paintings, sometimes they're bells and whistles that we use that are just not necessary to telling a good story. And sometimes they're absolutely essential to telling a good story. So that's the short answer. The longer answer, which you don't have time to get in here, but it's basically try to line up, if you're having multiple characters on multiple timelines, try to line up their milestones.
Awesome. I saw Al says, around how much is the program money wise? Yeah, so it's greater than $1,000, less than 5,000. So it's kind of in that range, and that's something we can talk specifics. I mean, first we want to see if folks are a good fit, and then we can talk specifics and all that stuff on the call as well. But yes, it absolutely will require investing money, time, and energy to get this book done successfully over the next few months.
Yeah.
Let's see. A couple final questions here. Is alternating between nonfiction and fiction feasible? This is from Lori, and I'm actually going to answer this. And I would say no. And the reason why, so we only have 2 rules at Self-Publishing School. And one of them is you can't write more than 1 book at a time. Now, if you mean alternating like, oh, you wrote 1 nonfiction book and now you want to write a fiction book, that's absolutely okay. If you mean alternating, if you mean like, if you mean like writing 2 at the same time, then that's definitely not advised because you're just going to spin your wheels on both. And what we're all about is, hey, let's get 1 done and get it done right and get it done all the way to the finish line. And this is what I was talking about with a lot of folks this weekend in Phoenix at the event I was at, is they had all these book ideas and they've been working on multiple ones for years. And they have half-written books that have not been finished. and will not be finished unless they get serious about it. And I mean, in this case, work with us and to get this thing done, because you know, it's like the whole what got you here won't get you there. Like, it's obviously not working what they were doing. And so I said, hey, we're going to help you focus on one book and get that book to the finish line. Let's see. There is a couple more questions. Lisa, I have trouble with plot holes derailing my story. What is your strategy for helping authors eliminate plot holes from their work? Thanks so much.
So probably the best way to do that, I cover this in the editing section, is that you really need to, well, there's certain techniques that you can use while editing to kind of take a look at plot holes and how to deal with them. And there are 3 different kinds of plot holes. Again, we cover that in more detail in the membership portal. But in short, the 2 kinds of plot holes that you really got to be careful about are the ones that pull you out of the story, and the ones that actually derail your story in the sense of it no longer makes sense. So what you want to do is take a look at your manuscript and try to identify every plot hole that's there. And then sometimes just talking it out with a friend is one of the best ways to do it. That's why the coaching calls are so great, is because you're not just talking out with a friend, but you're talking about it with someone who knows.
Awesome. Final questions here, and we're going to wrap up. Manuela, how much do you usually pay for an editor?
That varies from genre to genre and the experience of the editor. So the short answer is that we have a Rolodex or a thread in the community, rather, where you can take a look and get editor recommendations. Generally speaking, as a ballpark, because again, it really widely varies, is anywhere from 1 to 5 cents per word. And I'm sorry, I can't be more specific. It really depends on other factors.
Cool. Love it. Any advice from Christina? Any advice on briefly adding a different genre to a novella?
You know, don't do it is the advice. And actually don't briefly jump into another genre for a little bit. Stick to one genre. That doesn't mean that, you know, sci-fi can't have fantasy elements, that drama can't have comedy elements, but you got to have a dominant genre that you know is the thread throughout your story. Don't confuse your reader. And one of the things that really amazes me, and I genuinely am still trying to figure out why this is that on the plot calls, at least 50% of people that I work with say they're writing genre X, but are actually writing genre Y. And I genuinely don't understand where that confusion comes from. Yeah. But the most common one is romance, where people will come in and like, I'm writing a romance. And it's like, actually, you're writing a fantasy that has romantic elements. You're not writing a romance at all. And sometimes the opposite is true. I'm writing a fantasy. It's like, actually, you're writing a romance that's set in a fantasy world, but it's actually a romance. And it makes a huge difference to get the genre right, because the reality is that you are competing. Remember, you're ranking out of 4 million books. Okay, that means that there's more than 4 million books on Amazon. The surest way to fail is to confuse your reader.
It's great feedback, Rami. This is why I'm hoping everyone who is still with us, which is a lot of people, goes and books a call to chat with one of the people on my team about potentially enrolling in the Fundamentals of Fiction course. Because as you can see, this guy knows his stuff. And even just that plot call alone, I know most of your students from the first round of this program, Rami, they said the plot call alone, worth the price of the program. And so I think that you're going to, I think you guys are going to really find this valuable. And really the next step, if you're on the fence or if you think this is right for you and that we might be able to help you, whether you're writing a memoir, fiction book, children's book, you name it, the next step is to book a call. So if you haven't already, go ahead and head on over to the orange book a call link or to self-publishingschool.com /fiction. I'm going to say last call to book a call for those the fast action bonus. So if you get last call to go ahead and book a call on this webinar, and then once you book a call, comment in the chat with I booked a call, and I'd love to kind of give a shout out to the final people who are stuck all the way to the end and have just booked a call. I'd love to give you guys a shout out. So go ahead and head on over there, click a time, fill out the application, show up to the call. We'll be able to talk about your book and about whether or not Fundamentals of Fiction is right for you. And then come back here in the chat once you book that call and just type I booked a call. And then I'll answer a couple final questions. This is the last call to book a call. And I'm going to answer a couple of final questions here. I saw Theresa says, I really want to talk to Rami. Yeah, so you will on a plot call inside the program. And that's the next steps there. I saw someone asks, what if a person doesn't have that kind of money for the program? So we do have payment plans that can break it up. And so, we do have those payment plans. So that's something that we can talk about on the call. Once you book a call here, self-publishingschool.com/fiction, we can talk about the payment plans and options and things like that. The right group, what information would you need to maximize the application call? So you're going to have some questions that you'll fill out. That's the most important part. In terms of coming to the call prepared, make sure that you really kind of think through, okay, what does success look like with my book? What's the timeline that I want to write this in? How important is it that I finish this book now versus 5 years, 15 years from now? Like, start to think through those questions of how much of a priority is this for me? What does success look like? Those things. And that's going to help us to kind of drill in and say, okay, let's lay out the path of where you're trying to go, where you're at right now, how can you get there, and how can we potentially help with that? And so that's what I would do to make sure that you come prepared for that call. All right, looks like we got a bunch more people booking calls. If you haven't already, if you're on the fence, we're going to go ahead and wrap this webinar here. Make sure that you go ahead and click that link and open it in a new tab, because when we close down this webinar, I don't want you to miss this link. If you haven't already, go to self-publishingschool.com/fiction, or click the orange book a call button. Find a time that works today or tomorrow. Don't delay. Don't wait till later to book a call. Just book it right now, because I promise you these call slots will book up very quickly. And like I mentioned last time, we sold out the program in less than 72 hours, and we had to cancel a bunch of calls that were booked towards the end of the week from people who procrastinated and said, oh, I'll book a call later, and they weren't able to join, and they were very disappointed. So I don't want that to be you. We're going to cap it and keep this program intimate, just like we did last time. So it's first come, first serve, and I just want to make sure that we help you out. So Eleanor just booked. Love it. Teresa says, I have to scram, but I do have a half-finished novella on another tab, so I'll get to work on that when I get back to my keyboard. Teresa, book a call with us. We'd love to help you take that half-finished novella and take it to the finish line, and I think this could be really helpful for you. Awesome. Catherine says, excellent webinar. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the call. Awesome, Catherine. Looking forward to it as well. And hey, I hope that you guys found this really informative. I hope that you have some notes. I know there were a bunch of people that were saying my hand can't keep up, or I have 3 pages of notes, or just really enjoyed this. What from the time-saving techniques, so that free up the time to get this done, to hey, all the money is in fiction. As Rami touched on at the top of this webinar, 46 out of the top 50 books on Amazon and in terms of sales are fiction books. And then especially what I think a lot of people liked is those 5 fundamental milestones of a good story. So I hope you have some good notes. I hope that you go ahead and book a call, and I hope to see you guys inside the Fundamentals of Fiction course. Thanks again for registering. Thanks for being the committed ones that stay all the way to the end. And Manuela says 14 small pages on notes. And Sue just booked a call. Awesome. So thank you guys again for taking time out of your day, spending time with us. I hope you found this helpful. I hope that you go ahead and book a call with us. Would love to chat and see if it's a good fit to work together. So one last call, go to self-publishingschool.com/fiction. Go ahead and click the link right now, or you can click that orange book a call button and book a call. We look forward to chatting with you and hope to see you in the program. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you real soon.
Take care, guys. Wonderful talking to you.